talk a little bit about Leicester, though, Frank. I don't know how much you know about what's been going on up there. Friends of mine in the communities that I know, not in Leicester necessarily, but elsewhere, in what you might call the, Hindu and Muslim communities, are saying, look, people have been living in Leicester side by side for a very long time. This has nothing to do with immigration as such. It's more to do with what you might call the rampant sort of politicisation, if you like, of sport, the hatred that's fueled these young men from perhaps India and Pakistan. There's a rise in Hindu nationalism. There's a rise in Muslim extremism. Is it that?
I think there's a lot of misinformation. The way that I look at it is that, in the first instance, the problem is the fact that multiculturalism isn't working in the way that it should. Yeah. And under the surface in Leicester, for a very long time, there have been a lot of tensions that are quite independent of anything that has occurred the last few weeks. The idea that somehow it was a very harmonious community, which is what the mayor says, is a bit delusional. You know, if you've been up to Leicester and you've talked to people in the communities, you realize that suspicion was fairly evident all along for many, many years. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that the authorities are reluctant to address the fact that the problem is within Leicester itself. So there are all these fantasy stories about outsiders coming in that somehow they kind of deflect the criticism by talking about these people kind of arriving in Leicester, or alternatively, they blame the social media rather than what's happening in Leicester itself. Yes. I think that's very dishonest. And the second thing, I think there's a kind of double standard that's kind of brewing up, whereby it's very fashionable to blame Hindu fascism, but if you ever talked about Islamic fascism, you would be kind of denounced as Islamophobic. And I think there's been a tendency to, in a one-sided way, to only see one side of the story, and not understand that all this talk about extreme Hindu nationalism deflects from the fact that there is a kind of intercommunal tension, but the blame essentially should be equally shared by both sides.